Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the Ethan,
nevermore.
On today's episode of I Need to See That, psychological horror.
I was looking at our audience. So first off, we have more countries now. We have the United States and Norway. But also we have Ireland, Belgium, Canada, and Mauritius. Mauritius. How do you pronounce that?
Say my country of origin correctly. Say it.
Is this your country? Is this your family?
I've never heard of that.
Mauritius? Mauritius?
No, it's not.
Those are our countries, and then we are 61.9% female, 31% male, 7.1% not specified. And then our ages, this is a big one. 14.3% of our audience are over the age of 60. So if you are listening to us and you are over the age of 60 and from Mauritius, please email us. I would love to talk to you.
But if you're over the age of 60 and not from Mauritius, or from Mauritius and not over the age of 60, we're not interested in you.
Okay, I just looked it up. It's pronounced Mauritius.
Yeah, Eli, you idiot.
What a month it's been. I've learned things. We're wrapping up our month-long exploration of horror movies this month. How do you two feel?
I'm so relieved we're done.
Ethan?
I liked it.
I
like horror movies.
I learned
a reason
lot.
to watch horror movies. You did a lot of research, and I learned from you.
Yeah.
We're gonna go over psychological horror today, which I think is a great place to end because it is. I came into this thinking, oh, gore is my genre. Gore, slasher, I love that. I love blood. I love red corn syrup. But I think psychological horror has the best list, and this was the hardest for me to come up with a top 5. I don't know if you two agree, but these are some good movies.
Well, I think that we even sort of encountered this in our lists earlier, that certain movies are multiples of these genres. A lot of horror movies have a psychological element that are also slasher movies, or a psychological element that are also monster movies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that some of the best ones span all those categories.
And I think what makes them especially terrifying, because it's like what's imagined in your mind, and that's sometimes can be the most terrifying thing because you're not actually seeing it, which is what I very much experienced watching this movie this week. But I'll get into that in a little bit.
Caroline this week watched one of my favorite movies called Don't Look Now. Every time I want to say Don't Look Up, but it's Don't Look Now. An incredible movie, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, Caroline. I want to get into something we talked about earlier this month, which is the idea of masters of horror, directors who have just built this list of horror movies and really helped shape the genre. There are the ones that people talk about, like your John Carpenters, your Wes Cravens, but Ethan, who do you put on your master of horror list?
John Carpenter, Wes Craven, those two definitely.
Let me quickly. John Carpenter directed Dark Star, Halloween, The Fog, The Thing, Christine, Prince of Darkness, which is an awesome movie. They Live, and In the Mouth of Madness, which is an awesome movie. John Carpenter rules. Wes Craven, Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Swamp Thing, Nightmare on Elm Street, and most of the sequels, and the first 4 Screams. Great list as well.
I mean, even just looking at my psychological horror list, not the top 5, but the full list, Mike Flanagan, who I know I've mentioned before, Ari Aster, of course, Jordan Peele, of course.
Mhm.
Those are some of the people that modern masters of horror.
Yeah, I also put James Wan on the list.
Sure.
James Wan did Saw, Dead Silence, Insidious, The Conjuring, Malignant, and he produced all of the Saws and all of the Conjurings, meaning the Nuns, the Annabelles. And he also produced Mithrigan, which I know both of you
Oh.
really like.
Mithrigan.
Oh,
Mithrigan.
Mithrigan. We love Allison Williams in this house. Justice for Marnie.
Doing my research on psychological horror, I think Ari Aster is the greatest director to ever live. I'm so obsessed with Ari Aster. I don't know if you two are very much disagreeing with me.
Caroline is not into it.
No.
I think
as she's
Caroline
mentioned.
left. Caroline
yeah,
left.
I'm sorry.
So long
I
ago.
left. Masters of Horror. I went to go watch Traitors again.
Yeah, when's our Traitors marathon or miniseries?
What is this?
Okay.
What is this show?
Traitors is the greatest show
Explain
on
it.
television and everything right now. It's started in the UK. It's basically Mafia, but you're in a castle. The US version is great because Alan Cummings hosts it. It's extreme camp. So you have 3 people who are traitors, and they have to pick one person that they murder, and then the faithfuls have to banish someone at the table. So this season's like reality TV Avengers. It's incredible, but Australia, that I'm 4 episodes in, might be better because it's all real people, but there's a clairvoyant. There's someone who was the longest held hostage in Australia, and he's now a hostage negotiator. It's amazing.
So we're just watching people play Mafia, and I don't say that in a judgmental way. That's the most fun game of all time. We all know that.
Yeah, but it with a budget.
Great.
Mafia with a budget.
Great.
Yeah, I
Cool.
can't recommend it enough.
What is cinema if it's not Mafia with a budget? What is all of art if it's not just watching people play Mafia with a budget?
You've said that so many times, actually.
Yeah,
I text it to Ethan every morning when I wake up.
he's
I
got
say,
it
"What is
tattooed on
life?"
his lower back.
Yeah, I have many
Show
tattoos
it,
on
prove
my
it.
lower back. Here, check it out.
Oh my God. Is that Ari Aster's signature?
Yep, that's the end of that. Yes, and we. Anything else you all want to talk about today? Do you see any movies recently? We're wrapping up horror.
Can I say something?
I've had a while. Yes.
No, Caroline, you say something first.
Oh, okay. Wow, thank you. I was just saying I've had a wild week of movies actually that I've seen. If you want to hear what we've seen since recording last week, and for the last week I've seen The Parent Trap in theaters. I saw Robot Dreams. This Is Me Now, which is we have to discuss. RRR I saw for the very first time. The Lobster for the very first time, and Don't Look Now.
I watched 2 movies this week. Neither of them were Madam Web. I'm so sorry. I was on a work trip near LA, but I didn't call Caroline. So there's that.
You know,
Here's something that I've started to do, and this is probably more a habit of my bad habits, sometimes watching movies with distractions, is that I will start watching foreign films on planes because I don't have the internet around me to distract me. So I really have to focus in a way that makes me, fully engage with the screen. So I'm not proud of that, but here we are. So I watched Another Round, which is the Mads Mikkelsen drinking movie. I was expecting more of a comedy, but boy, oh boy, was that a downer with a killer last 5 minutes with I
was going to say, the ending of that movie makes that... I watched that movie being like, this is a great movie, and the last 5 minutes I was like, this is the best movie I've seen this year. It's the best ending.
It didn't dissuade me from drinking heavily during the day. Don't know if that was the intention, but that's how I felt. And then the other movie I watched was Cinema Paradiso, which I had never seen, and that, that's one of those
wow.
all-timer movies. Everyone says to see it, and it was. And I cried on an airplane. So
I feel like we should start tracking that stuff. I feel like part of this podcast should be tracking the bucket list movies that
yeah.
maybe we're surprised that we haven't seen. I mean, Do we track it as a group, so it's a movie none of us have seen, or do we track it individually? Because Caroline's will be like Ghostbusters, Godfather, Godfather Part 2.
Godfather 1.
I think that if you see an all-timer that you haven't seen, like, you have to bring it to the pod. You have to, like, show up and be ready to say a couple things about it. Cinema Paradiso is just so... It is lovely. It is like this little hug of a movie, and it made me want to go back to Italy. And the ending is it really is one of the best. Love of cinema.
That, of course, is the other thing I text Ethan every morning is go back to Italy.
Back to Italy.
It's kind of fitting for the movie we're about to discuss.
And then you call me Mussolini? It's crazy.
It's really weird. It's actually wild you would watch a movie like that because when I'm in a plane, I only want to watch things like The Morning Show. That only makes sense when I'm 30,000 feet above ground.
The day I became a parent was the day subtitles forever were turned on my TV whilst watching any movie or TV show. So even if my kid's at school and I'm watching a movie, subtitles are on because I'm addicted to it now. So I think my relationship with foreign films have changed since I became a parent.
What if you're like, the kids are at your in-laws or something, and like it's just you and Michelle at home watching a movie with the full intention and the full focus is on the movie, your phone is away, will you still turn on subtitles?
Yes, and Michelle will sometimes point out, hey, we could turn subtitles off, and I'm like, I like them.
No, I
don't know. It's how I watch movies now. It's how it's just built into my DNA now. It's written, I have subtitles on my lower back.
Oh my God, you do. And
there's a lot of tattoos back there, yeah.
Yeah, I told you, there's a lot. I'm kind of like the guy from Memento.
That's right.
Ethan, are you going to watch Dune?
Yeah, I'll watch Dune.
I can't wait. I'm going Sunday night.
Jesus Christ. The disappointment in your voice saying that. Let me say it another way. Are you going to watch 97% approval rating, future Oscar nominee
I will.
Dune?
I'm going to see Dune. I will watch Dune. I'm hopeful that it makes me eat Eli's hat, but I read an interesting...
Would you watch Dune if we got you the popcorn bucket?
Well, no, I have the popcorn bucket. Michelle, I was going to say Michelle left me because I was quoting...
What?
I was quoting...
What?
I was saying Madeline left me.
Wait!
Left me for
The famous...
Whoa.
The famous...
I was going to quote Eli's joke from a previous episode about how Michelle left me years ago, and I was going to do the same with Madeline, and then it combined...
Michelle left Eli to give Ethan the popcorn bucket.
And then went right back to Eli.
What immediately popped up into my head is Ethan took the famously phallic Dune popcorn bucket and named it my wife? Is that what's happening, Ethan?
No. Oh, God, no. Dune sucks. Whatever. Dune
I'm going to see
sucks.
Dune.
And now, my dear friends, we present to you the history of psychological horror. Quoth the Ethan,
Nevermore.
All right, let's get into psychological horror.
Do it.
So I don't have a history, because it all follows the same history lessons that I've been given this whole month. We're talking psychological horror this week, which it's kind of hard for me to define psychological horror, but it's a genre of horror film that focuses more on tone and atmosphere to strike fear. A lot of filmmakers use very innovative filming techniques, and they use sound and color and editing to kind of give this feeling of insecurity and anxiety and fear. These movies focus on a character's mental or emotional state, so it's more of an internal struggle versus an external struggle that we've been talking about with monster movies and slashers. You have repeated themes of anxiety and guilt and paranoia and grief, and you have, just like with most horror movies, the use of metaphors here used to critique elements of society. But getting into the history, we've talked about the first horror film is Le Manoir du Diable, House of the Devil, or Manor of the Devil, 1896. But in the 18th and 19th century, there was actually a lot of Gothic fiction. These books set up very specific tones. They have archetypes such as unreliable narrators, and they're very much expressions of psychological fears. Such authors as Edgar Allan Poe, of course, and Henry James. So after Le Manoir du Diable comes out in 1896, you start getting a lot of film adaptations of these early Gothic fiction. So you get, for example, in 1909, a French version of The Pit and the Pendulum, Le Puits et la Pendule. Was that okay, Caroline?
Yeah, that was almost French.
It was directed by Henri Desfontaines. I think that was okay.
Henri.
So I guess we're not getting the French audience.
I've been to France. I've been to France a few times, and every time I go into any store, and in my head I'm like, I got this, and I'm like, bonjour, and every time they're like, hi, what do you want? Like every time, it's just so like in my head I'm like so perfectly saying bonjour, and in reality I'm like, it's like me walking and being like, hello.
That's a good character.
Thank you.
The guy who speaks English but is trying to speak English
in another language.
Yeah. In 1909, another movie comes out called The Sealed Room. This is actually in the U.S. and directed by D.W. Griffith. Are we going to do like a D.W. Griffith deep dive one day? There's a lot to talk about with
No.
The only DW I want to talk about is from Arthur.
Thank you. That was good.
Dora Winifred.
That was good. And then, of course, 1920, a masterpiece comes out that just changes horror. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I've been talking about it a lot. It's pure Gothic German expressionist art. Think about most modern horror movies. Think about anything directed by Tim Burton. It all comes directly from Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It directly influences future horror movies such as Nosferatu and all the Universal classic monsters of the 1930s. But it very much set a very specific tone. And that tone is only built upon as psychological horror continues to come into play. In 1942, a movie comes out called Cat People, which to me, and I rewatched this week, it's very much a blueprint for this slow burn psychological horror we see today. It's very heavy on mystery. Have either of you seen Cat People?
No.
No.
I know them.
Okay. You know some Cat People? It's very much... So the plot is a fashion illustrator thinks she is a descendant of cat people. That's the movie. But there's a lot of themes of paranoia and anxiety.
That's fun.
A character who questions reality. And that to me is the reoccurring theme here of all of these psychological horror films we're about to go through. Themes of suspicion, distrust, self-doubt, paranoia about oneself. All of these themes are in Cat People and very much define future psychological horror movies as the years go on. Kind of cool. Of course, in the 1950s, we get all the sci-fi and monster movies. If you want to hear a list of those, listen to our monster movies episode. But you get a lot of big old monsters who are metaphors or responses to societal issues, like a giant monster representing class warfare, essentially. The 1% literally stepping on poor people. The horror is very external in these. It's literally a giant monster is chasing you. Many film critics say that psychological horror is a response to these monster movies, replacing fear of monsters with the fear of guilt, paranoia, self-doubt, distrust. You get it. In 1960, the movie Psycho comes out, and that changes everything. If you want to hear more about Psycho, listen to our slasher films episode. But Psycho's not just a slasher film. It also plays with the tone, with tone to instill fear. An example of this is the score. We talked about it briefly last week, but the score does so much work in Psycho to really drive home the fear, right?
Okay.
It sounds like somebody stabbing. Around the same time, we got French New Wave coming into play in France, which is essentially a rejection of traditional filmmaking techniques and conventions, giving filmmakers an actual artistic voice. This is auteur cinema. Filmmakers taking new approaches to editing, visual style, and narrative. And we start seeing these French films in America because in 1948, the Supreme Court decided that studios could not also own the movie theaters. And that's why U.S. audiences were able to see foreign and independent films and not just studio system production code films. An example of a French New Wave horror film is 1960's Eyes Without a Face, directed by Georges Franju. I think I nailed that. That's that. I would say Eyes Without a Face is a bucket list movie if you haven't seen it. It's a really great movie about
Adding to
adding
the
to my
list.
list.
it's really cool, and it's a really good. It's really fun to watch that movie and compare it to other movies of the late 50s, early 60s, just for its filmmaking techniques. Really cool. I think it's on Criterion Channel. This rise of New Wave also led to New Hollywood, which in Hollywood were filmmakers basically rejecting the traditional studio systems and really having their own voice. So filmmakers like Peter Bogdanovich, Robert Altman, John Cassavetes, and Roman Polanski, famous monster human, good filmmaker. In 1965, his first movie comes out called Repulsion. Repulsion is a psychological horror film about essentially this woman going insane. But some of the filming techniques are really cool, including this one scene where she's walking down the hallway and all of these arms are coming out and trying to grab her. It's really cool. 3 years later, Roman Polanski makes another movie called Rosemary's Baby, which both of you have seen Rosemary's Baby, right?
I think so. Yeah.
What a movie. That is the first movie I think of when I hear the word psychological horror. Just throwing that out there. And it could be used as a metaphor. It showcases the horrors of being a woman in a patriarchal society. Also the horrors of motherhood. And it's a very fascinating movie if you haven't seen that yet. 1973, you get Don't Look Now, which Caroline's going to talk about quite a bit in a little bit. 1980, Stanley Kubrick gets The Shining. All of these movies, as I start listing them out, just think about the filmmaking behind the scenes of these. Like, these are all very fascinating movies that all have remarkably different filming techniques, different editing styles, and are very auteur based. So you get 1973's Don't Look Now, an absolute masterpiece, pending what Caroline's about to say about it. 1980, you get The Shining. 1980, there's another movie called Maniac, which is a really cool movie. Fast forward to 1990, you get Jacob's Ladder, which is a fascinating examination of PTSD. Also a very famous twist ending. A lot of these movies, that's another trope of psychological horror, is the twist ending. 1990, you also get Misery, Stephen King's story about fanaticism. 1991, you get Silence of the Lambs. Fast forward to 1999, you get The Blair Witch Project, which is a movie I recommend checking out again if you haven't seen it in a while. It is a brilliant movie. It's really cool. Sixth Sense also comes out in 1999. In 2000, you get American Psycho, which I argue is a straight-up comedy, but you could see it as a psychological horror film as well, focusing on greed, capitalism, patriarchy. 2010, you get Black Swan, one of the few films, horror films nominated for Best Picture. So good. And this is the 2010s, I think, are where psychological horror goes from essentially well-directed horror films to an actual its own art form.
Right.
But listen to the movies I'm about to go over from the 2010s and beyond. So 2010, you get Black Swan. 2014, you get It Follows, The Babadook. 2015, you get The Vivitch, The Invitation. 2017, you get Mother. You get Out. 2018, you get Hereditary. 2019, The Lighthouse, Midsommar. 2019, Us. 2020, The Invisible Man. 2021, We're All Going to the World's Fair. 2022, Pearl and Speak No Evil and Nope. 2023, Infinity Pool and Beau is Afraid. We are in a golden age of psychological horror right now. Ethan, how many of those have you seen?
Most of them. And it's like the thing that's getting people to the movie theaters. Like, these movies are making money.
Yeah, especially the Jordan Peele ones. What were you going to say, Caroline?
I was going to say, one might say we're all amidst psychological horror right now.
Yeah, and I think horror is a reflection of the society we're in. So, yes, every movie's about grief and depression and anxiety and not knowing the future. And, oh my God, our country's going to fall apart. And I won't get too much into that because our audience is largely 60 years old or older. But, yeah, it's definitely a theme. I copy and pasted something from an article I read about psychological horror. This subgenre reveals the complexity of human nature through the use of metaphor. Struggles with external demons or monsters are metaphors for the emotional and psychological struggles. Characters are battling their own inner demons. Resolutions are complex, complicated, and unexpected. The villain may get away. The protagonist may have to learn how to live with a monster or disappear completely into madness. These films are often light on gore and I couldn't sleep for a week scares. They rely more on atmosphere, subtle, creepy details, suggestion, and ambiguity. Yeah. I really like that definition. And that's psychological horror.
Well.
And now I don't have to do research anymore. I'm done.
You did great, Eli. You really did.
Yeah, it was great.
I
learned a lot.
In all sincerity, this was really fascinating, and it shows your love of this genre.
I do love this genre.
Should we share our lists?
Yeah! We're going to go over our top 5 psychological horror films. Important note, because Caroline watched the movie Don't Look Now this week, neither Ethan or I could put it on our list. It would have been my number 2.
Well, my number 5 is Killing of a Sacred Deer. The guy of the moment, Yorgos Lanthimos.
I thought you were going to say Barry Keoghan.
Yeah, the creepiest little fucker. The movie just stars Barry Keoghan as creepy little fucker 1. From Cincinnati. Did you know this movie takes place in Cincinnati, even though everyone sounds Irish? This movie is utterly dreadful, and it is Yorgos's style in this kind of genre. You got to go see it. All of his movies are they make you feel kind of terrible inside. I mean, Caroline, you saw The Lobster this week. What did you think of that?
I loved it. I'll say I loved it. It might be, I haven't seen Killing of a Sacred Deer, but I definitely loved it way more than Poor Things. Like so much more. I think I also was trying to decide what animal I would be. Have you all thought about this? I think I'd be a capybara.
Oh, nice. I thought an owl.
I'd be the Dune popcorn bucket named Michelle.
So I guess this bit's not getting cut this week. I guess the bit's staying. What's your number 5, Eli?
My number 5 is Midsommar. I have the screenplay next to my desk. It's a horror movie that's shot in the lightest, brightest sun you'll ever see. It is a colorful, light, bright horror movie and one of the best depictions of grief I have ever seen on cinema, and a movie everyone should see. And don't just see the movie, see the director's cut, see the 4-hour-long director's cut. It is such a good movie. Obsessed. Midsommar. Caroline saying absolutely not.
I love Florence, but I will not be seen. And for those reasons, I'm out.
I'm out. This is, to me, the number 1 Florence Pugh performance.
Wow.
And there's a lot of good ones out there.
Like the television show Hawkeye.
Yeah, very much the television show Hawkeye.
Dune 2.
And Fighting with My Family, where she plays the WWE wrestler Paige. That's a real movie. All right, go ahead. What's your number 4, Ethan?
My number 4 is a movie called Creep, starring Mark Duplass. This movie is creepy, and he is very creepy in it, and it is a really fun, probably almost more of a subversion of the slasher genre, but I felt like this, for some reason, again, these categories sort of bleed within each other, but the psychological element to really watch this guy and one particular potential friend, victim, no spoilers, was really fun. This is a really great movie if you haven't seen it. And I liked it better than the second one, but the second one's worth watching too.
The smile he adopts for that character in Creep is... I think about it a lot. Should we do a Mark Duplass deep dive one day? Like
yeah.
Mark June Ploss.
I mean,
I just want to get you to... I basically just want to get you two to watch Biosphere. Because I've talked about it so much.
Is that the one?
Maybe for your birthday.
With the penis?
For your birthday.
Yeah, maybe for your birthday. And then we can watch a few episodes of Mindy Project.
Yeah.
He was great.
Aw.
He's a great OBGYN.
And The League.
Yeah. Oh, The League. The League was great.
My number 4 is Get Out. Do I really need to say more about Get Out? It's an incredible movie. Jordan Peele is a master of horror.
And Justice for Allison Williams.
You know, the original ending was different. Which is so great. It's so funny how Lil Rel is there. Originally, it was just going to be a cop who arrests him.
Yeah, and the test audience hated it so much, so then they put this other one in, and the audience just ate it up. Jordan Peele, there's an interview where he talks about, like, the first time they screened that, and the audience they needed to have a good time to go home.
Yeah.
My number 3 is Midsommar. The movie's just rock and roll. Daytime horror, rock and roll.
Caroline, how do you feel about Ari Aster?
I don't think I'm ever going to see any of his movies.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. My number 3 is Hereditary. Hereditary changed me as a human being. I am no longer the same person I am today after I've watched Hereditary since before I watched Hereditary. It's a movie that it fucked me up. It fucked me up. It still fucks me up. I can't say the name Hereditary without having very graphic images pop into my head. That fucks me up. Yep. Done. Great. Thanks, Ethan.
My number 2 is Misery, which I know, Eli, you mentioned on your list. Misery is Kathy Bates' best performance. She's so scary in this movie. James Caan is really good. Just check it out. It survives. It's still very thrilling. Good horror movie. Did it invent torture porn?
Did it invent torture porn?
Like torture porn horror. Like, is there a line from Misery to Saw?
Yeah, there is. There are other examples, especially in early giallo films of torture, that get a little bit more graphic. But it is definitely an early representation of it in what got us to the hostels of the world.
Cool.
But there are some giallo films that I can send you that will fuck you up too.
Cool.
My number 2 is Rosemary's Baby. We've talked about it enough throughout this entire month. I think it's it might be on my Mount Rushmore of horror films. Maybe. That's a tough one. But it's a great movie, and it to me defines, like I said, it defines this genre for me.
That's a great movie. Number 1 for me is The Wicker Man.
The Nicolas Cage one, of course.
No. If I ever go to Scotland and hear one person start to sing, I will be terrified. This is actually probably another good daytime horror movie. A lot of stuff takes place in the daylight, and it is not scary in the way that like Midsommar is, or Misery, or Hereditary, but it is as Eli talked about, like it's a tone, it's a psychological tone before its big crescendo finale, which is ridiculous and terrifying all at once.
What's funny is I have a fun fact about that movie from Don't Look Now. It was shown as part of a double bill with Don't Look Now in the UK release in 1973.
What a double bill. What a double bill. When I saw Midsommar at the Alamo Drafthouse, they showed clips and trailers from the original Wicker Man, and I thought that was a really cool. It's like it's the perfect thing to show before that movie.
Yeah, those movies are in conversation with each other for sure.
Hey Ethan, what's my number one?
I think that your number one. Well, why don't you lift up your shirt to show us your new back tattoo? It is Morbius.
No, read it again. It says red rum on the back on my.
It's The Shining.
Yeah, my number one is The Shining. Ethan's number one. Last week, it's The Shining. It defines auteur horror, and to me, that's where you go with psychological horror. Plus, it is a study of a man going insane. It is a study of how to show a man going insane without looking at the audience and saying, this man is going insane. It's also, there's no voiceover. There's no direct cuts to him mumbling to himself, I'm going insane. It shows it. It shows it every step of the way. And yes, you see on the typewriter, all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy, makes Homer something. But the way it is filmed, the way he acts, the way his hair changes, it's a perfect movie.
Yeah, that's on the Mount Rushmore of horror for all of these
That's
lists.
on the Mount.
Yeah, it's The Shining.
Didn't Stephen King not like it?
Yeah, he did not like it. I've never read the book. He did not like it. They did a miniseries of it that was more ushered by Stephen King. Apparently, it's bad. Kubrick's Kubrick.
Is that why you hit him with your car? Because you didn't like his take on The Shining?
That's why I hit Stephen King with my car?
What?
You don't know that Stephen King was famously hit by a car in Maine?
Why do you know so much about this is the real question.
I know. Eli,
It's
where were you in
Where
Maine?
were
popular
you
lore.
20 years
20
ago
years
with your
My
car?
references are not that hip. I only say broad references that 60-year-old audience members will get. You know what, Ethan? You told me your dad was mad at you for not knowing the
Hays Code.
about the Hays Code. So I'm going to challenge that your dad's going to be mad at you because he didn't know Stephen King got hit by a car. Your dad laughed at my joke. I'm throwing that out there.
Well, as one of our 60-plus age listener demographics, we'll see.
We love boomers on this podcast, famously.
We love boomers. We love them.
Caroline,
Yeah.
tell me about the movie Don't Look Now.
Okay. Should I give a synopsis? Do I need to? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's hear a synopsis of a very hard to define movie.
Okay. This movie came out in 1973, directed by Nicholas Roeg. And had I known what else this man directed, I would never have agreed to watch this film because this man directed The Witches, a movie that has famously haunted me since childhood. Have either of you seen The Witches? Starring Angelica Houston?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. And I've seen the sequel, or the remake.
Oh, the Anne Hathaway?
But yes, the Angelica Houston one gave me nightmares, still gives me nightmares.
Yeah, and if I had known he had directed that like that, I would not have agreed to watch this movie because this movie, it took me 2 days to watch in broad daylight. I had to stop every 10 minutes. But basically, okay, it's about this couple, Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. They lose their child and then they go to Venice. and they meet these creepy sisters. I don't know why that's a trope in film, that because two older sisters who are single and they're taking care of each other, they have to be creepy, but whatever. And a lot of other supernatural things happen along the way. Okay, so my thoughts about this film. I realized I Mandela affected myself because I thought the Dua Lipa song was called Don't Look Now, but it's Don't Start Now, because I had a thought. I was like, was this movie inspiring the Dua Lipa song? And it didn't. But it's a great song. We love Dua Lipa on this podcast. It did. Okay, I have multiple notes about, I've never thought about having to go to the boats at the hospital, or like go to the hospital by boat, or like have a funeral on a boat. Very chic in Venice. Okay, there's two kind of like big things we'll get to about this movie in a second. But I was wondering, do we think House of Gucci was happening at the same time? And do we think this movie's in the same universe as House of Gucci?
Was Jared Leto like a younger version of that character? Just
That's what I was wondering, because I couldn't think of what year House of Gucci was.
I think it I think it all is related.
It's all related. Okay, and then what do we think was the scariest moment in Venice's history? This movie, climate change causing the water level to keep rising, or the Don't Worry Darling 22 press,
He spit. He spit. He's
so spit.
He 100% spit. He's so spit.
Last year, Caroline and some friends, and I'm very sad I couldn't be there to do it, dressed up as people from the Don't Worry Darling press tour for their Halloween costumes, and it is a really funny thing you did. I'm just giving out funny compliments, but you deserve that one. That was really funny.
Originally, I wanted to be the spit, but no one, you would have to explain a lot, so it's Harry Styles instead.
That is so funny. I didn't know that. Hey, Caroline, that's very funny.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for letting a woman be funny. It's really nice. Okay, but overall, okay, before I get into like other stuff about the movie, it's very unsettling, this entire movie. There's a lot of cutaways, but the two the biggest thing, there's this sex scene that never ends in this movie. Like, it was starting, I was like, wow, they're like really having sex, and it keeps going on. It felt like it was a third of the movie. And so I then discover, okay, so I did a lot of research on this. Also, okay, originally, what I think is also, because there's a lot of drowning things in this movie, originally, Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood were maybe attached to play these parts, and I think that's very wild, because Natalie Wood drowned, and Christopher Walken was on that boat. Do we think Robert Wagner did it, allegedly?
Wow. Yeah, he did it.
If you don't know about that, we can get into that another time.
I think he did it.
I think
the answer is yes.
They've been reopened. They were talking about reopening it, but I think that would have been very interesting if the two of them had been in the movie. But apparently this was the first scene in the movie that they filmed.
Day one sex scene.
There was a lot of controversy. There's a lot of like thing about this sex, because Ethan, you haven't seen this, right?
No.
Okay, this sex scene, there was a lot of debating about the rating for this movie because of this sex scene, and they had to cut out 9 frames so it could be shown in theaters. And there's a lot of debate over the years whether they thought the sex, like they actually had sex or not, because it's so graphic, and he had to cut away at like different points so they could show it on screen. It's also one of the first times that they showed like female oral sex on screen as well. And there was a wild story that I read because of this. Okay, so basically, so it was the first scene they shot. They came down at 7 a.m. in dressing gowns, waiting downstairs while the room was prepared, and both had a glass of champagne to calm their nerves, and that it was just Nicholas Roeg and the cinematographer Anthony B. Richmond, each operating their own Mitchell 35mm camera. They disrobed, got into the bed, and then they began filming. So he kept shouting directions off screen over the noise of cameras to the actors, such as lick her nipples, put your hand between her legs, get on top, and the shoot lasted until well into the afternoon before Roeg was satisfied and wrapped.
Wow.
It's like shocking. I had no idea. Like this sex scene kind of took over my entire experience of the movie because I was like, I just couldn't believe. I didn't realize there's like so much lore about it. And Warren Beatty was apparently dating Julie Christie and went to a party he was at. And because there was a rumor that Nicholas Roeg had some kind of porn reel that he kept from this, and Warren Beatty punched him in the face at this party because of that, and it was later proven untrue.
I've had a really similar experience with me and my Dune 2 popcorn bucket. Warren Beatty punched. Punch.
Hey, what's the name of your Dune 2 popcorn bucket?
I don't remember.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
Wow. Okay, well, now I gotta go watch.
Yeah.
Caroline, just like, do you believe in sex scenes in movies? Like, yay or nay?
I think, well, okay, after watching this one, it's just really hard to know, like, ethically where the lines blur, like, when you film something like this. Because, even when you watch this, because, like, Eli, I'm not sure what you, like, felt about this, Eli, but it was just, like, it was very, like, it felt like you're in it. Like, it feels like I'm watching two people actually having sex.
I thought it was real until you told me it was not unsimulated.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like...
It was simulated?
Yeah, there was, like, a lot of back and forth about it, but they only just, like, said in the last 2 years that it wasn't. That it was simulated.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It
doesn't seem simulated.
It's on Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
Streaming.
It's quite a movie.
Something.
We'll get more into this in our month-long discussion of sex scenes in movies, Sextember. We have a couple months.
And we're actually, like,
for that.
pro-abstinence, so it's going to be very chaste.
Yeah. Yeah.
But... yeah, it was a good movie. I honestly didn't expect to be as scared as I was from it, and there's just so many different aspects of it. And it's funny, I was like, is Venice this scary? And then I read another thing that apparently Venice was nervous about this movie being released because they didn't think people would come visit because it's so scary.
Did you find it scary?
I found it very scary. I was debating finishing it, and I was like, I don't think I can. I watched it by myself, so I was watching it in like 10-minute chunks because I just kept having to stop. I was like very unsettled by all of it.
How did you like the ending?
I feel like I knew it was coming.
Okay, it is a popular clip for sure.
Yeah, and it's wild. And I'd also read too, there's like the fall Donald Sutherland has mid-movie, and apparently there's a lot of issues with that as well. And if he had done it any differently, he would have died because it wasn't rigged properly. And the stuntmen refused to do the stunt because they didn't have insurance for it. So they made Donald Sutherland do it anyways.
Well, that's it, Caroline. Thank you. And thank you for watching Scary Movies. You're done. You're off the hook.
You did it, Caroline.
I am barely.
And now it's that time of the show. Where we make Ethan watch a movie there's no way he'd ever want to see. Ethan's Reluctant Review this week. Ethan was asked to watch the movie Madam Web, and he didn't do it.
I made it 10 episodes. It's pretty good that I did it 10 episodes in a row.
So Ethan messaged us, what is his punishment? What does his punishment need to be?
Okay.
And Caroline, I thought of a punishment for Ethan.
You thought of because I also have one too.
You can both give me a
okay.
punishment.
Okay,
Caroline, you go first.
Okay, because I didn't want to talk about it yet until everyone watches it. I think Ethan has to watch This Is Me Now.
Is that the J-Lo disaster?
J-Lo movie?
It's not a disaster. It's a cinematic moment.
Okay, great. I will.
It's 66 minutes long.
Eli?
So for next week, you're going to watch that movie. You're also going to watch Madam Web. And you're also going to watch Argyle. Thank you, Ethan,
Thanks,
for
Ethan.
your service for the podcast. He's shaking his head no, he's not going to do that. We're just going to keep adding titles. So Madam Web and Argyle. And that wraps up our horror month. And next month is March. And we're going to do a March Madness. So next month, we are starting our month-long March Madness, the March Sisters Madness. That's right. The cast from the two popular Little Women are going to go head-to-head.
94 and 2019, baby.
So it's going to be the movies of Florence Pugh versus the movies of Emma Watson versus Saoirse Ronan versus Eliza Scanlon versus Kirsten Dunst versus Claire Danes versus Winona Ryder Rider versus Trini Alvarado. It's going to be quite a month of movies.
I made it through horror just to get to this.
Eli, you should work on your Dick Vitale impression. Do you know who that is? Did I just go over our heads?
He's the guy who hit Stephen King
Unbelievable.
with his
I'm
car,
quitting
right?
this podcast.
Also, next week, we're going to give our final Oscar predictions.
Fun.
So get ready for that.
Can't
That
wait.
means we have to lock them in. That means we cannot change our minds between recording the podcast and the actual Oscars coming. So do your research, gang.
Wow, it feels like the Golden Globes were 100 years ago.
That's our show. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Hit that subscribe button. Email us at ineedtosee.pod@gmail.com. Visit us at ineedtosee.com.
Wait, did we ever intro the podcast? Did we ever intro?
I'm
By the way,
Ethan.
this is I Need to See
I'm
That.
Caroline.
I mean, that.
By the way, this is I Need to See That, a podcast about movies. I'm Eli.
I'm Caroline.
I'm Ethan. This was recorded at the end. If he tries to edit it early, you have to keep it at the end.
AI Ethan's about to make an appearance. Today we're talking psychological
I gotta
horror,
go.
moody, atmospheric, and as always,
No, I don't.
Ethan hit Stephen King.
No, I did not.
and as always, oh, he's gone. So he's gone, so we can say anything.
Wow, it's recorded.
I need some more takes.
But the Ethan, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the Ethan said,
Nevermore, nevermore, nevermore.